Now we're on to what I'm watching, which was supposed to be The Suicide Squad. And then I watched it and I was like, meh, it's an okay movie. I'm not super excited about it, so I don't want to talk about it because then, I'm just rattling on this podcast going like, "Oh, Suicide Squad wasn't that good." And I'm like a little grouch. Nobody likes a grouch. So, what am I going to talk about? I am going to talk about Jungle Cruise. All right. So some of you might laugh and be like, Jungle Cruise. I thought this movie was going to suck so hard. Okay. Not even lying. All right. I had no faith in this movie. I was like, this movie's going to suck. I don't like Dwayne Johnson. His movies are always boring. They're always the same. Just watch that Skyscraper movie. Oh my goodness. He made it. That Skyscraper movie was just awful. And then what they did like San Andreas. Oh, there's too many to count. I can't even. But I like Emily Blunt. I was like, she's kind of fun, and I think it's kind of interesting whenever Disney makes these movies about their park rides and how cool it is that they're able to just take like a roller coaster and make a movie just based on that. I mean, I guess Jungle Cruise isn't like a roller coaster, but it's a ride, an amusement ride. So without further ado, let's just get into these questions. As you all know, I have these 4 questions that I always ask, and it helps me, review these movies and stay objective. Let's say objective. It's probably, that's probably going to be a stretch. It's probably a subjective rating, but I like to think that it's an objective rating. First question, is the storyline rushed or bloated? I don't think it was. I think a good standard for was it a bloated movie was if a kid was watching this, would they get bored? I don't think so. I think maybe in the middle, it might get a little, maybe in the middle, maybe, but not really. There was well-paced action, interesting story beats as they continued on. As for Rush, definitely not. It's a fairly long movie. So storyline really great in terms of pacing. Second question: are the characters relatable? Relatable, sure. I would more say I liked the characters. And this is where I kind of want to break out for a second and just say this movie is the successor to The Mummy that I have always wanted. First off, it's basically The Mummy. I called this in the beginning. My mom was like, "Oh, you just read this somewhere." I did not read it somewhere. I read it after the movie that someone else shared this opinion. Okay, which is nice. So I'm not crazy. But it's that when I talking about The Mummy earlier in the podcast, I talked about how like, hey, there really hasn't been a lot of movies that have been able to capture that adventure spirit that you saw way back in like Indiana Jones. And I think this movie really does capture it. There's a little bit of difference in regards to, hey, there's more CGI than those movies, which, is question 3, so we're not going to go there yet. But I really, really liked it because I was like, I like The Mummy. The Mummy's great. So they were able to capture that adventurous spirit with a little bit of scary elements, with like that, there's a sad villain who was trying to get something and he got cursed. And they had a little bit of Pirates of the Caribbean at the same time. So if you remember, so spoilers for the Jungle Cruise movie, so you might want to skip this. But in Pirates of the Caribbean, they have this whole thing where you have these pirates on the Black Pearl, and they're skeletons at night because they took this cursed gold, and so now they can't die, basically. Later on in the movie, Johnny Depp takes one of those coins, and he becomes a skeleton. He can't die, and it's sort of like his way of beating the other skeletons. And that sort of surprise is kind of the same in this movie because Dwayne Johnson, it's revealed, was also cursed with the bad guy because he used to be friends with the bad guy. So not only is our hero a cursed hero who's kind of immortal, but also our villain is a cursed immortal. And that was a very cool surprise that was also, in Pirates of the Caribbean. So it had great stuff from Pirates of the Caribbean, great stuff from The Mummy, and they kind of put it together and you get this movie. I like both The Mummy and Pirates of the Caribbean. So, go figure I like this movie. But back to relatable characters, right? So, Dwayne Johnson, surprisingly, not bad. I thought it was really, really fun that, obviously, the big thing about the Jungle Cruise ride is you have your kind of, I forget what they're called, but like your skipper person. They make like weird, like dad jokes and stuff the whole time on the ride. And so, Dwayne Johnson does those same jokes. And so they kind of brought that over from the ride. Emily Blunt, was very typical in regards to most of her roles, where she is a woman who will not be talked down to, and she will get what she wants. And then you have her brother. I don't know the name of that actor, but he is literally the brother of Rachel Weisz in The Mummy. So if you remember The Mummy, Rachel Weisz's brother is kind of, this rich, pompous guy who's like, oh, I don't want to play in the sand or whatever. In this case, Emily Blunt's brother is also that kind of role where he's just kind of there to be the comedic relief kind of guy. So yeah, the characters themselves, very fun, personable. Maybe you could say they kind of fit more archetypes than natural living, breathing people, but it's a Disney movie. So what you gonna do? Third question, right? So of course I lost my page, and you would figure that I know the questions by now. But third question: does the movie draw attention to the fact that it's a movie, right? So for those of you who are new, of course you'd be like, well, it's a movie. Of course you would be like, hey, this is a movie. I'm talking more in regards to, like, you're watching a movie. Does something strange happen, whether it's editing or music or CGI or acting, that is kind of like, oh, this is a performance. Like, when you're watching something, you want to get sucked into it, right? You don't want something to pull you out in regards to the movie. Like, if somebody's making popcorn, that's, the movie can't do anything about that. I didn't really like the CGI in this movie. There is one part that is so strange, and I don't know why they did this. Dwayne Johnson is wrapping a rope around a wooden pole, right? And it's CGI. Like, it's like Dwayne Johnson didn't have the ability to hold the rope, or maybe they didn't have the rope in the budget, or I don't even know. Like, why was the CGI? Why was the rope CGI? It just looked so strange. And then, there's also there's a lot of green screen. There's CGI animals everywhere. So it does suffer, in my opinion, from that overuse of CGI in Disney movies nowadays. So that'll get a negative mark for me. There was a lot of rough CGI too. So it's just, I got taken out of the movie quite a few times because of the CGI. And then last up, would I rewatch this movie? How about this? So when we finished this, my family was like, I hope they make a second one. And it has been confirmed they're going to be trying to make a second Jungle Cruise movie. I don't know what it would be about, because the whole story and all the stakes in the first one were solved. And if you look at, like, right, The Mummy, once they got rid of Imhotep and they went to Jet Li, it suffered, and it didn't really, like, there was nothing there. The second one at least created more connections to Egypt and Imhotep and all that. So 1 and 2 are kind of like a 2-in-1 story. 3 is kind of separate. Jungle Cruise, I don't see where any possible connections could be made in the second one, unless they kind of follow the Mummy and maybe Emily Blunt has some sort of relationship with the Amazon. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm not very excited for it. However, right, we're talking about rewatchability. I would probably rewatch this one. Like, if I were ever with some, like, kids or something, I'd put it on and I would be fine watching it. It's a funny movie with some interesting characters, and the world isn't too bad, honestly. It's kind of an interesting world that they've created. I like the way it ended, I like the beginning, middle, end, all that stuff. It's a fun adventure movie for the family. And I'm kind of impressed. I think Disney did a really good job. I wish that they hadn't overused the CGI so much. Also, Paul Giamatti's in this movie, which whenever Paul Giamatti's in a movie, you've already got, like, extra 2 points. Okay, so Jungle Cruise, I would recommend this movie. I think, especially the people who watch my YouTube channel and the people that listen to my podcast, most of you would really appreciate this movie. You'd think it's fun, and you'd probably rewatch it again.